All right, here we go. Today we have Charles Cosby, former lover and business partner of the godmother Griselda Blanco, who currently has a Netflix series about her life. Welcome to VladTV.
It's a pleasure, my brother. It's been a long time coming.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of people saw you on Cowboys, too. But I want to get deeper into the story. So,
Absolutely.
Let's start at the very beginning. Born and raised in Oakland, California.
Born and raised in Oakland, California. I'm a 60s baby. Went to Brookfield Elementary School, Madison Middle School, Fremont High School.
Okay. And you're the youngest of 4 kids.
Youngest of 4 kids.
Okay. And you had a fairly stable house life till your mother found out that your dad was actually living a double life.
Yes, my mom was a nurse at Samuel Merritt Hospital. My dad was a supervisor at Fleischmann's Yeast Company. We had a pretty great life, better than most kids' lives at that time because I had 2 parents in the house. And my mom found out that, my dad was a homosexual. I was 2 years old. And so that's the last time that we had a family unit.
Okay, because your mom overheard your dad talking to one of his gay lovers, basically, on the phone, right?
Yes, my mom picked the telephone up in the kitchen. My dad was in the bedroom, and she overheard my dad talking sexual to another man on the phone, which was, like you say, his lover.
Okay, and then at that point, a big fight broke out, and your dad essentially left the house.
Yeah, well, a fight ensued when my mom confronted my dad. Police were called. My dad went to jail. And that's the last night we spent together as a family.
Okay. Like after that, did you see your dad at all?
Maybe once a year. Not that often.
Okay, because he's still your dad. Regardless of what he does in his personal life, that's still your dad, you know?
Yeah. He's my dad, and I always yearn for my dad's love, but, it just wasn't meant to be.
Because he was maybe embarrassed to come back around or that kind of thing?
Well, he would rather be with men than with his wife and children, so.
Well, you can be with a man and still have your kids. I mean, just because your wife, isn't there anymore, you still have 4 kids.
Yeah, of course. But, he was more interested in things outside of the home than what was inside of the home. So, like I say, that was our last night we spent together as a family, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's too bad. Well, now you got a single mom raising 4 kids on her own after a very traumatic breakup with her husband. And she became alcoholic after a while, right?
Yes, my mom became a functional alcoholic. Many nights I witnessed her go to work drunk. That's how she escaped and buried the pain by drinking. She overdid it on most days, but, she was still functional. She still went to work, paid the bills, took care of us.
Okay. You fast forward to 1985. You're 17 years old, and crack starts to hit Oakland. Up to this point, what was the big change that you saw once this actually happened in Oakland?
Well, during that time, we would go back to like maybe 1984. In the city of Oakland, as you know, is very small, very small. Back then it was like 300,000 population. Everybody knew each other pretty much, whether you lived in Brookfield, Sobrani Park, 69 Village, everybody knew each other because Oakland is very small. So when crack hit, we went from kids literally riding mongoose bikes, catching a bus to Eastmont Mall to go shopping. We went from that to selling, buying cars, basically living a fast life.
Okay. Now, you yourself, you knew a named Banana.
Banana, yes. I grew up with him at Brookfield.
Okay, and he put you on first.
Yes.
All right, so tell me about that first exchange.
Well, Banana was actually 1 year older than I was. He was 17, I was 16. He was making money, a fair amount of money. He used to post on 100th and MacArthur Boulevard. But he still lived in Brookfield. So, he bought cars, had bankrolls in his pocket. So I asked him, I came to him as a friend, I want to live this life that you're living. He said, okay, well, this is what I do for you. I give you an ounce. I teach you how to cook it. You make your money, and you come and deal exclusively with me, which is what I did.
Okay, so now does your mother know about it? Do your siblings know about it?
Well, at that particular time, me and my mom, we lived alone. My older siblings, one was away at college. My other two had their own houses, one on by Lake Bayard, and my sister lived in West Oakland. So it was just me and my mom there.
Okay. So does she find out, or are you keeping it kind of low?
Well, I'm going to tell you a story. So one night, I was in the kitchen with me and two of my guys. So I had a coffee pot, and I was cooking up 2 ounces of Coke, right? And so my mom came in the kitchen, and she saw me with the coffee pot. So I put it down on the stove. I was walking to the sink. So I put it back down on the stove. My mom was like, what is that? I said, it's nothing. She says, no, yes, nothing. So she went and got the coffee pot off the table, off the sink, off the stove, and poured it down the sink. She said, if it was nothing, well, I poured down the sink. 2 ounces of Coke in its liquefied form.
Right. How much is that worth during that time?
Well, back then, an ounce of Coke was $2,000.
So that's $4,000.
$4,000.
Poured down on the sink. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, during that early time of you kind of getting your feet wet, especially in Oakland, there's a lot of robbing, stealing, scamming, and so forth, especially if you're kind of new. Like, what was the worst thing that happened to you during that time?
Well, see, back then, in the beginning, it wasn't a lot of robbing and definitely really not no scamming. The worst thing that could happen to you back then, like somebody could come to your spot where where you getting down at, and they have a box, maybe a VCR box, and they was okay. We want to sell $100, so you just pay them, but then there'd be bricks in the box. So that was the bricks in the box thing that they was doing back then. So that's the worst thing that could happen to you during that time. It was maybe 1 or 2 years later before the violence really came into the equation.
Okay, so here you are, you're slowly building up, and your main guy, Banana, who you're getting all your supply from, he ends up getting...
He got robbed.
Right, by the vultures. Guys that basically would rob.
Yes.
And I remember all this in Oakland. You had the guys that robbed.
Absolutely.
And this whole system just kind of kept going on. Because, if you get robbed, you can't go to the police.
You can't go to the police.
And say, they just robbed me in my...
Got to take it into your own hands.
Exactly.
Street justice, we call it.
Exactly. And your guy ends up getting during one of these robberies.
Yes.
Which set off a chain of events of back and forth.
Well, a few people died as a result of that.
Right. That's what I mean. So the guys who killed them their friends end up getting...
Yes.
And then the word is that you're next.
That I'm next.
Right. So what do you do at that point?
Well, at that point, I went to Fresno, which is where I was born. And, I had, still family there. So, I had roots there. So I went to Fresno for a year.
So you go to Fresno, you stacked up about $30,000 at that point, and you're just laying low, essentially just spending money.
Yes.
Until you run out.
Yes.
So then what do?
I returned back to Oakland, to Brookfield.
Okay. And you don't really have any skills at this point, so you go back to selling.
I had no social skills at all.
Yeah. And also trying to rob.
Well, yeah, because, a desperate time, he had created a desperate means, so, yes.
Okay. And there was a situation where you actually kidnapped somebody.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so like me and 3 of my guys, we concocted a scheme to go out and rob, not necessarily kidnap, but rob So we happened to kidnap this one guy. He was like a major player back at that time. Kidnapped him and got, a large amount of from him. And I was right back in business, maybe about a week or two after I got back from Fresno.
Well, you ended up robbing him of his, but then
we made a phone call
for a ransom.
Yes, and we got a ransom.
Okay,
and we dropped him in San Francisco afterwards.
So you called up his people and said, "We have him. We want $50,000."
Well, he actually called.
Oh, he called.
He called.
Said they have me, and I'm gonna need $50,000.
Well, he said I need $50,000.
Okay, and they actually came up with it.
They came up with it.
How does this exchange happen? Like, how do they drop off the money and know that they're going to get him back? Like,
well,
I'm sure it's a very dicey situation. You don't know if the feds are going to be involved, the police are going to swoop in.
They had to trust what he said.
Yeah. So how did you guys actually make the money exchange?
Well, I met the guy's wife at East Mall, Taco Bell, East Mall.
East Mall.
And so we dropped him in San Francisco.
Okay, so you got the money, dropped him in San Francisco, then that was it.
That was it.
No revenge, no nothing.
Well, actually, the house that we took him to in Brookfield on a street called Maddox, it was a house that belonged to a named Michael. So they shot the house up, but, it's not my house, so I didn't care.
Okay, so then you go right back in business and you basically go back to selling again.
Absolutely.
Now, around this time, you start to hear about Griselda Blanco, who was gotten locked up like the year before?
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about Griselda Blanco for a second. So Griselda Blanco was born in 1943 and grew up in Medellin, Colombia.
Yes. Grew up in Medellin. She was born in Cartagena.
Mm-hmm. And she lived in the worst poverty. No running water, no electricity. And this was during a time in Colombia where there was a lot of social unrest, a lot of...
Yeah, what they called it, La Violencia, which was a war, the government against the revolutionaries.
Right. And she actually committed her first at 11 years old.
11 years old.
Can you tell me about that?
Okay, so her and a few of her playmates, they concocted a scheme to kidnap somebody, hold him for ransom. So they kidnapped a boy, I believe he was 10 years old. And so they took him to the mountains. She lived in the mountains. The poor people live in the mountains. The rich people, the well-to-do people live in the flatlands. Mm-hmm. The complete opposite of America.
Yeah.
So they went down, snatched this little guy, took him up to the mountains. And so they wanted, to shake his family down, so the family refused to pay. So Griselda put a gun between his eyes and blew his brains out at 11 years old.
11 years old. So
even when she had her first period, she committed her first.
So she became at 11.
At 11 years old.
Did she ever tell you how she felt doing that?
She didn't have no remorse because, whatever she had to do to live a better life, she was willing to do it.
Okay, so 11, she does her first. She meets her first husband, Carlos Trujillo, at 13.
Yes.
And she ends up having 3 kids by him.
Uber, Dixon, and Weber.
Right. And they start actually, they start a marijuana business in Colombia. Right?
Well, it was a small-scale business.
Small-scale business, exactly. But then an argument ends up happening between her and her husband. And she ends up getting him, or she kills him herself? Like, what happened exactly?
She actually had him.
Okay. How does she have him?
Just pay somebody to. It's that simple, like ordering fast food.
Okay. So now she kills her first husband. She ends up running away from home. And this is where it gets a little hazy. Some people say she became a prostitute. She denied her becoming a prostitute. Do you know this part of the story?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so what happened exactly?
Okay, so as she got older, her relationship with her mom became kind of damaged, So where they would get in fights and arguments. And one day in particular, they had a big blowout, big blow up. And so her mother brutally beat her So that's the last time she spent with her mom. And so now, at the age of 12 years old, she was thrust into the world. And so, when you're that young, no social programs assist you. There's nothing else you can do except commit murders or sell your body.
Yeah. So she became a prostitute.
She became a prostitute.
Okay. So then she ends up meeting her second husband, Alberto Bravo.
Alberto Bravo.
And the two of them end up illegally going into the U.S. right around 1964.
May have been 68 or 69.
Okay. Right there in the 60s.
Yeah, in the 60s.
They illegally enter the U.S. and they set up shop in Queens.
Queens, New York, exactly.
And what happens next?
Well, Alberto allowed Griselda to lead. She was a natural born leader. So he gave her free reign. So they started importing cocaine from Colombia, a couple, and then, it doubled and tripled. So they had that basically bought the from Colombia to New York in suitcases with false bottoms. So you could, hide it, you could conceal it. So that took off like a rocket ship. So she went from making $20,000 a week to maybe $1 million a month. And this was like maybe 6 months in. Back then, it was a new craze, it was a new fad. You had the party scene, you had the entertainers, you had the star athletes. New York was the biggest city at that time, which New York is still probably the biggest city. So she had all the clientele, whether you was on Wall Street or a janitor, everybody was fascinated with this new craze of and she took full advantage of it.
Right. And within about a year, her and Bravo were making like $10 million a week.
Yeah, it was making about $10 to $15 million per week.
Yeah, crazy.
That was like a year and a half in.
Okay, so she's building up this huge operation, and then in 1975, she ends up getting caught with 13 pounds, and then 37 people around her get arrested.
Yeah, so what happened, she got indicted. It was called Operation Banshee, where her and 37 subordinates, they were indicted. So they rounded everybody up. Griselda was the only one to get away. She had the financial means to get away. So she convalesced a while in Colombia. Maybe a year or so later, she relocated to Miami Beach and resumed.
Right. So in order to avoid this arrest, her whole family essentially moved to Colombia, right?
Absolutely, yes.
But then she came back into Miami.
She came back to Miami about less than a year later after the indictment dropped.
Right. And then at that point, things started to get really huge. She was worth something like $500 million at the point she went back to Miami, and that tripled to like $1.5 billion.
Yeah, well, before the indictment, she had a fortune of about $500 million. Okay, so once she relocated to Miami Beach, she became a certified billionaire. She basically controlled almost everything that was, all that was flown into Miami. Griselda had her thumbprint on it.
Right. And she would have these massive parties, and like Pablo Escobar would go to her house.
Yes.
And I guess,
yes.
I remember you said something like she introduced Carlos Escobar to the cocaine business?
Okay, so like when Griselda was operating on a large scale in New York, at that time, Pablo Escobar was a car thief. He stole headstones from the local grave, shaved inscriptions off and resold them. So that's how Pablo Escobar made his living.
Okay.
So Griselda took him under her wing. He became her protege. So that's how he got his start, through Griselda Blanco.
Did you ever meet him at some point?
No, I never met Pablo Escobar.
Okay. All right, because she would have these huge parties, and Escobar, Carlos Slater, they would go to her house, and I guess she had like a bust, like a statue of her face, and they would like rub it for good luck. And
Yes, like all her guests, whenever they came to her estate, the bus sat right in the foyer. So they would just rub it for good luck.
okay. And I mean, at this point, they were calling her the godmother of Queen of. I guess she told you at one point that she feels like she's the baddest bitch to ever take a breath of life.
Well, if you think about it, that was certainly true.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, to this day, I don't know a woman that is aggressive or as she was.
Right. So let's get into all that. So here she is, this huge kingpin or queen pin in Miami, making hundreds of millions of dollars. But now she's having issues with Alberto, her husband.
Yes.
He disappears to Colombia for a few weeks, and she goes down there to confront him to see if she could save the marriage.
Yes.
What happens next?
Okay, so like Alberto was cheating on Griselda. And so it came a point where, you know, he stopped coming around, you know, other than, you know, when he had to collect, you know, what was owed to him. So she was doing everything on her own. At that point, she no longer needed Alberto, but that was her husband. She loved her husband. So he was cheating with women in Colombia and women in Miami. So she took a private jet to Medellin one evening, basically to try to rehash a new agreement between the two. So when she arrived in Medellin, she met him and his crew. And, you know, she went to talk to him, be cordial, you know, try to, you know, work out an agreement, you know. She was doing the lion's share of work, so she should, you know, get a lion's share of the income.
She wanted more of the money, basically.
Yeah, she wanted more of the money. And so he didn't agree with it. He told Griselda, you know, well, when I met you, you know, you were a prostitute, you know, so, you know, stop tooting your own horn. You know, we did this together, which wasn't true. Griselda, she did all the legwork. You know, she was the aggressive one, you know, expanding routes throughout the country. Not Alberto, it was her. She was the real leader. So they had a big blow up in a parking lot, and she shot Alberto and killed him.
Well, they both pulled out guns on each other.
Yes. So she shot him in the face. He shot her in the stomach.
Right. So he's dead.
He's dead.
She goes to the hospital.
Yeah, she was in the hospital for about approximately 3 weeks.
She survives.
She survived.
Okay. So then she comes back to Miami again.
Back to Miami.
Now, during this time was essentially known as the Miami,
which is what they call the Cowboy Wars.
The Cowboy Wars, exactly. And they're saying that she's connected to a lot of these. They're saying that she's connected to 250.
And that's a conservative estimate.
Okay. Do you believe that?
Knowing what I know about Griselda and as close as I was to her, absolutely.
Right. Well, because if she fronted you some and you didn't pay, then she would kill you. If you fronted her some and she didn't feel like paying, she would kill you. It would kind of go both ways.
Well, you know, it's a cutthroat business. You know, no matter how you slice it, it's a cutthroat business, you know. And Griselda taught me, you don't get into this game to make friends. You get into it to make money. So, you know, there was no such thing as friendship in that business.
Well, she had a third marriage or relationship with one of her hitmen, Dario. And they end up having a baby together. Her youngest son, Michael Corleone.
Michael Corleone Blanco.
Who's named after the Godfather, Michael Corleone,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And at one point, a problem happened, and Dario went and took Michael Corleone back to Colombia.
Yes. Well, so they had a fight. Dario didn't like how Griselda was raising Michael. So they had a fight. You know, Griselda, she was a loving mother. You know, no matter how you viewed her. She was a loving mother. She loved Michael all the way to the very end. You know, that was the light of her life. So Dario didn't like how Michael was being raised. So he opted to take Michael to Medellin, you know, to get him away from that situation. And so Griselda, distraught, you know, very distraught, she responded the only way that she knew, you know, with aggression. So she paid some rogue police officers in Medellin to stop Dario while he was driving in the car with Michael Corleone in the passenger seat. You know, a little bitty kid, about 5 years old at the time, maybe four or 5 years at the time. And so they ordered Dario out the car. Dario didn't know that it was a hard hit. So, he complied, he got out the car. And when he got out the car, they let him have it.
Right. So this is now the third husband.
The third husband.
That she's had.
And
at this point, they're calling her the Black Widow.
The Black Widow. A Black Widow spotter mates, then their mate, right?
Right. So basically, she's the father of her youngest son, and then she gets Michael Corleone back into the U.S.
Yes. Maybe a week later or so.
Okay. But the king of Dario sets off a war in Colombia. Because wasn't Dario kind of affiliated with Escobar and some of those cartels?
Well, Dario was loved, and like his younger brother. He was a major hitman in Miami. So it became a war, and it was Griselda versus everybody else, because not only was your life in jeopardy, by being her competitor, but she, her price was so low that nobody could compete with Griselda because she was controlling the chain of command all the way from the jungles of Colombia all the way to Miami. So nobody could compete with her. So they were forced to move, to Jacksonville, further, places further up. You know what I'm saying? But in Miami, she controlled Miami. She had free reign. So when the war broke out, it was, like I said, it was everybody against Griselda. So she went to war.
Yeah. And there's a $4 million price on her head.
Yes, $4 million.
Okay. So then by 84, she ends up moving to California.
She moved to California,
right.
Irvine, California.
Irvine, okay. And then that's when the DEA finally caught up to her.
After 10 years on the run.
Yeah. She ends up getting arrested. She goes to trial. She gets found guilty of one count of conspiracy to manufacture, import to the United States, and distribute. And she got 15 years in prison.
35.
35 years?
35 years.
Okay, my bad. Why did I read 15 in certain places?
Yeah, no, she got 35. The thing of it is, so the deal that she made was a 15-year sentence.
Aha.
So when it came time for the judge to sentence her, he gave her 35. So she had been double-crossed.
Got it. Which happens, when it comes to the government.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now she's in prison in California, close to where you're living.
About 20 minutes away.
20 minutes from where you're living. And you find out that she is, spending time there, so you decide to reach out to her.
Well, we had got to back up just a tad bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this customer, her name was Manuela. She used to reside in Panama, but she knew Griselda at one point, at an earlier point. And so she kind of worked with her. So she was really the introduction to Griselda. I gave her an ounce of coke, and she introduced me to Griselda.
She's locked up right now. She's 48 years old.
Approximately 48.
Yeah. So you start sending her letters to essentially establish a relationship.
Establish a friendship, yes.
Yeah. Well, what made you actually write that first letter?
Because I've always been a hustler. I've always been an opportunist. So what better opportunity to expand my small career by reaching out to the godmother coke.
Right. And you're still a young guy at this point. You're 23. You had your hair's all permed
About
and
23.
pretty.
Yes.
You know, a youngster at that point.
With big inspirations.
Yeah. You know, big aspirations. You're less than half her age.
Yes.
So you start to write her, and after the first letter, was it after the first letter that she called you?
Well, we had been corresponding back and forth.
She wrote a letter back.
Yeah, she wrote a letter back. I still had her. Actually, her first letter was a postcard. So we wrote back and forth maybe about a month or so, and so it was the 4th of July of 1991 when we first spoke on the telephone.
Okay, what was that first phone call like?
Well, before she called, a lady called from New York. Just a random lady called from New York, and she was like, I'm calling, to inform you, Griselda's going to be calling you in about 10 minutes or so. So the phone rang. And back then, you can just call straight through. It was part of your commissary, just include the person's number, and then you could call. So she called straight through. And so the first thing she said was, "Thank you, Charles, for reaching out to me."
Mm-hmm.
She said, "There's so many people who have contacted me, but I never respond. But it was something about you, the things you said, the way you worded your letter." She said, I had to, respond, not only because Manuela said you were a great guy, but just the things you said, it touched my heart as a woman.
Okay. So you went from 1 phone call a day to 6 phone calls a day.
Yeah, 5 or 6 phone calls
So
a day.
she would just call you all through the day.
Yeah, she would be bored or whatever, and we just talk.
Yeah. Okay. How did you feel about the relationship at that point?
Well, at that point, we were just establishing a foundation of a friendship at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I still had thoughts of expanding my business. So, but we were building something that would go on to lay the foundation of a love affair.
Right. So how long after you initially wrote her to you actually going down to the prison and visiting her?
Okay, so at that point, I was on probation for a crime I had committed in 1990. So I had about maybe another 6 or 7, 8 months remaining on my probation. So I was barred from seeing her. But she called me one morning, like I said, months later. And she said, "Charlie, you can come see me today." So you usually have to fill out paperwork, but I didn't fill out no paperwork. And so I went to go see her, one-on-one.
Okay. So you show up at the prison, and after talking to her for months, now you see her face to face. What was that first meeting like?
The very first meeting, it was electric, to be honest with you. Stood my place in line, went through all the different security protocols, finally made it to the visiting center about maybe an hour later, 45 minutes later. So once I was there, they direct you to a table. You have to wait for the inmate to be brought in. So I waited maybe another 30 minutes. And so inside the visiting center, there's a door. And above the door is a light. So when an inmate is getting ready to be led in, the light starts blinking. So the light started blinking. And I'm really nervous now. My palms are sweaty. This is the godmother, person I looked up to for a long time. So when she was led in, it was like time had kind of stopped. It became slow motion as she walked, the 20 so steps from there to the table. And felt like a dream because this, like I said, this is a woman that I admired for 7, 8 years. You know, this is my biggest inspiration. And now to be in her presence. And so when she reached the table, you know, we hugged and we kissed like we had been boyfriend and girlfriend for years. You know, we had that chemistry between us.
Well, you admire her, but she's more than twice your age.
More than twice my age.
She is overweight.
A tad bit.
Tad bit overweight. You know, not probably the type of woman that you would holler at the club.
In her defense, I would say she was very beautiful, though.
Okay.
With beautiful hazel eyes.
Okay.
But she was, you know, tad bit overweight, you know, 5'2", 210 pounds.
It's more than a tad bit, but, you know.
Yeah, tad bit.
A little bit, you know, but, you know.
But she was built solidly.
Right. Well, you know, and I got to say to some of my homies from Oakland, you know, they know how to finesse certain types of women.
Absolutely.
And, you know, get what they need out of the situation.
Absolutely.
I've had friends like this growing up in Oakland, so here you are, kind of part of the same vein. So yes. I'm not knocking you for it.
Okay.
All right. So you guys kissed the first time you guys met.
Mm-hmm.
And you started to see her like every week.
Yeah. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So really 3 times a week.
3 times a week.
And then holidays, if a holiday fell on like a Wednesday or Tuesday, it would be 4 times a week.
And she would actually pay off the guards $1,500 so you guys could have sex.
Have sex, yes.
In a back room.
Yes.
What was it like the first time you had sex?
So went to the visit center. I waited, and so she didn't come out. So a guard came and was like, you know, follow me. So I followed her, and it's a room to the side, like it's a stage area, and then to the side of that, it's a door. So she opened the door, and Griselda was laying across a cot, and she was like semi-nude. And so the guard told Griselda, you guys have 15 minutes.
She had to make it work. So this became a regular thing. Like, how many times you guys have sex in prison?
If I had to guess, I would say approximately 100 times.
Okay. Was this something you were into yourself, or were you doing this more of, okay, look, I do this, she's gonna help out my business, so I'm just doing what I got to do, or are you really kind of into her?
Well, see, as I alluded to, Griselda's a beautiful woman.
Okay.
You know, a great kisser. She actually taught me how to kiss. I wasn't a great kisser until I started a relationship with her.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like having sex with a 21-year-old up the street, so it was no different.
Okay.
I mean,
right.
Pussy is pussy, you know?
Okay. Well, so now you guys are establishing a relationship, and it gets to the point where she actually introduces you to her son, Michael Corleone.
Yes.
And you guys start to have kind of a close relationship.
Yeah, we did, very, very close.
He was 12 years old at the time, right?
Yeah. So at the time, Michael was 12 years old. He lived in a city called Morgan Hills, which is past San Jose, about maybe 20 minutes past San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
So she called me and was like, you know, I want you to meet Michael. I was okay, no problem. So she gave me his address. I drove out there. And Michael, till this day, is the most intelligent 12-year-old kid I've ever met in my life. You know, very articulate, respectful, cordial. And so, you know, he liked me a lot as well. You know, we just got along. I mean, out the gate, we got along really well. I would bring him to Oakland. He would hang out in Oakland. We would go to Oakland A's games. You know, he was good friends with my kids, you know. So he was a good kid, all-around kid, you know, in spite of the circumstances that his mom had been taken away 7 years earlier, you know, so, because he lost his mom at 5 years old to prison.
Well, he also lost his dad at 2 years old.
Absolutely.
Because of his mom.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
Was he aware that mom, dad?
At that point, no.
Okay.
Michael didn't become aware of that, and it was printed in a book.
Aha. Later on.
Yes.
Okay. So here you are. You have this relationship with Griselda. You're, a father figure to her son. At what point did you say, listen, I want you to help me with my...
Okay, so like the very first time that I visited Griselda, as I said, we established a rapport on the phone, throughout all those months. So the very first visit, Griselda asked me, what can I do to make your life better and your family's life better? She knew I was in the game, but she also knew that, I was a small fish at the time, right? A small fish in a big ocean. So I threw a number at her, well, if you can give me this amount of merchandise, which was 50 keys, I said, I could move it. Because I knew a lot of guys who moved heavy weight, but I didn't have a lot of weight, I was limited in my scope of merchandise and what I can do with what I had. So, but if I could had a connection like Griselda, I could move it.
At that time, how much were you going for?
At that time, kilograms were, I want to say about 40,000.
40,000?
35, 40,000, yes.
Damn.
Well, you basically, understand, even before then, 1985, it was 60,000.
Okay, so you asking for 50 is $2 million.
Approximately $2 million on the streets.
On the street. And she actually delivers on this.
Believe it or not, she delivered actually the very next day.
Huh. So how did you get the actual?
Okay, so even during Griselda's stint in prison, her business never stopped.
Right. She was running a $50 million a year operation
it slowed
while
down,
locked up.
It slowed down significantly, but it never completely stopped.
Uh-huh.
So she had some merchandise in San Jose. So she had one of her drive it to my house in Oakland the very next day, which was a Sunday.
Mm-hmm. So she fronted all this for you for free?
Well, she fronted, and so I got 10%. So of the $2 million I made, I got $200,000, which was a lot of money.
Right.
At that point, the most money I've ever had was $30,000.
I mean, as a full-grown adult right now, $200,000 may be a lot of money, but off of a $2 million total 50 package, that's like life in prison, essentially. You know what I'm saying? To run a business at such a low margin at 10% and taking such a massive risk, do you realize how crazy that is?
Yes, but I was looking at the big picture.
Okay.
I was in it for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
I knew if I played my position, was never short on money. I delivered on time. I knew that, I would have bigger paydays coming, which is what eventually happened.
Well, at that time, though, was it hard to get rid of 50?
No, because back then, everybody had money.
Huh.
Everybody had money. Like, for instance, so today, right? You might find somebody that's making $10,000 a week. Back then, it was maybe 200 guys making $50,000 a day just in the city of Oakland.
Okay.
So it was relatively easy, but now you could move 50 keys that quick because nobody has money. Everybody's doing other things.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you got the 50, and you said 45 days after meeting her, you became a millionaire.
I was a millionaire.
And then 6 months later, you were a multimillionaire.
Multi-millionaire.
So now, are you working with her, or is she just providing for you?
No, so I still work for Griselda, but she also allowed me to run my own situation on the side.
Okay. And you actually started working with her, though, with her operation at one point.
So I became her chief distributor in the United States.
And you were running 5 different cities.
Yeah, throughout the country, yes.
Okay. Now, here you are, this young black guy from Oakland, and her whole operation is all hardcore Colombians, and they're not really feeling it.
Yeah, well, they're called the old guards.
Yeah.
Guys who have been with her, since Queens, who may have gotten arrested and, eventually got out, or those who were not interdicted. So the old guard, the people that she started with, basically. So few of them were still with her. So they didn't like the fact that she gave me such a high-ranking position, and also because she was sharing her bed with a black guy, which is like a forbidden taboo.
Okay. So were you dealing with racism from these guys and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's no different than corporate America.
It's a black guy moving from corporate America. I mean, people die. In this business.
Yeah, but so yeah, I mean, they didn't come at me directly, but they spoke amongst themselves.
Okay. I mean, during this time, you're not used to doing this. You're running small, you're running crack houses and doing hand-to-hand and so forth. And suddenly you're dealing on a level where you're dealing with hundreds of. What was sort of the ugliest situations you've had to deal with at that point? Because she's not out. She's still in prison. So you're having to really fend for yourself. Do you have access to her whole organization, to her bodyguards, to her hitmen?
No. Just like the people that were closest to her. So one of the crazy situations, we were in Las Vegas, and we were at a hotel. I was in a separate room. So it was a 100 deal. And so the guys came and they laid everybody down. And so they got robbed. And so Griselda was really upset about it because the guy that she negotiated with was kind of like a trusted person. And so the guys who actually did the robbery was under him. So that created a big conflict. And the guy who she trusted, he ended up getting in, I want to say, New Mexico.
Okay, so $4 million of the just got robbed. Under your watch, essentially?
Well, see, it wasn't my call, it was Griselda. Griselda, she makes the ultimate call. Right. I just go personally and fill the orders.
Okay, so you're not being blamed for this?
No. It was the guy that she trusted.
Aha. Did you ever get robbed or anything else like that?
I never got robbed, but some guys attempted to rob me. But, ran up to my car with guns out.
Then what happened?
I got out of there.
Yeah, just got away.
Yes.
Okay. Did that make you think maybe this is not the business for me right now?
No.
I'm getting it over my head?
No, because the more money you make, the more money you want. And it's easy money, it's quick money. So even if you get shot, get out of the hospital, get shot again, it's not going to change your way of thinking, This life is for me, right? And so, but no, that's a part of it. That comes with it, it's wins and losses, and that's part of the losses. You just deal with it and just move on.
I mean, as the money was flowing in at this point, what was the most extravagant thing you did money-wise?
I would have to say, bought expensive cars, like any other guy that's in the street.
How many cars do you have?
Back then?
Yeah.
Maybe 6.
6 cars. Okay. All Benzes and stuff like that?
Benzes, a BMW, Porsche 911.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So here you are, and you're establishing yourself in her organization, and your main essentially was her son, Osvaldo.
Cheeky. Which means the little spoiled one.
Little spoiled one. Okay. Osvaldo ends up getting in Colombia. in 1992.
1992.
What was the situation around that?
Okay, so before Griselda got arrested in California during her run in Miami, it's this guy named Chucho Castro. So Chucho was a former hitman of hers. So he broke into one of her stash houses, stole a significant amount of, a few $1 million in cash, some automatic firearms. So they became enemies. So Chucho partnered with her blood enemy, which is a guy named Papo Mejia, just so he can get some form of protection. So Griselda paid her hitman, his name is Jorge Riverito Ayala, to go and Chucho. So in the course of him, Chucho, he accidentally killed Chucho's young son, Johnny, who was in the back seat, and Riverito didn't know it. So Johnny was, so at that point, Escobar turned against Griselda. Everybody and their moms turned against Griselda. So they were blood enemies. When Osvaldo was released from prison, he went back to Colombia. So at that time, Pablo Escobar, he was on a run. He had already escaped prison, so he was on a run. Chichi had a coming home party. He badmouthed Pablo Escobar. He wasn't nothing but a grave robber. He was a card thief. So he badmouthed him publicly. And Escobar had a big ego. Escobar had Chiqui killed. Not only because he was talking shit, but for the old vendetta he held against Griselda for baby Johnny.
Okay, so now Osvaldo's dead, and that was your main connect.
That was my main source of connects.
Exactly. So now you're having to kind of basically scrape up other sources.
Well, with Chiqui's death, Dixon became the head guy in charge, or El Negro, Griselda's oldest son. He never really liked me. In fact, after Chiqui got, I had a conversation with him. So he told me, I've never liked you. I've never liked you. You're an opportunist. I don't share my mother or my brother's love for you.
Right.
So product is slowed up. So he's doing his thing in Colombia. So I got my personal orders piling up in California. So I brought it to Griselda's attention. So she had a conversation with him. This is what we're going to do. He agreed to it, but he didn't follow through with it.
Right. Well, because you're the one that had to call Griselda and tell her that her son got.
Okay, so Dixon's the one who actually told me.
Aha.
He called me early one morning, crying. My brother got last night. Please inform my mom. So she would call every morning like clockwork at 8 o'clock in the morning. So when she called, I told her, Griselda, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Chiqui was last night, at the club. Hurt me as to tell her that, but.
Yeah, she didn't take it too well either.
No, she didn't.
Yeah, she lost it. But being that she was in prison, she couldn't actually go to the funeral.
No, she couldn't go. Absolutely not.
But she sent a note. to
She
be
sent a
read
note.
at the funeral. And what did the note say?
The note basically said, she thanked everybody for coming, celebrating the life of her son. She's sorry she couldn't be there. God willing, she will be released soon. And in closing, she said, into the who took the life of my son, the ground is going to shake beneath your feet.
And what happened to two?
One of them was killed, and the second one went to a church, went to the confessional box, confessed what he had did.
Right. So one of them killed themselves, and the other one was captured by her people and
captured, dumped on the soccer field.
Right. Okay. So, like we had talked about earlier, Griselda was known as the Black Widow because she had killed 3 of her husbands already.
Yes.
And she was extremely jealous.
Extremely.
When it comes to the men in her life.
That's an understatement.
Yes. But here you are, you're seeing her a couple times a week, but you're also not seeing her most of the time. So you end up meeting a white girl named Amber.
Amber.
Right. So how did things go with Amber?
Well, with me and Amber, things went well. Until Griselda found out.
How did she find out?
Well, she had heard some talk, right? The cousin, who was actually in prison with Griselda, had confided in her roommate that Amber was messing with Griselda, was involved with Griselda's man. So everybody in prison was loyal to Griselda, everybody. So the cellmate told this Cuban chick named Chical. She was a lesbian, a stud. So Chical told Griselda.
Okay.
And so that's what ignited the private investigator.
So she hired a private investigator to follow you around.
To follow me around.
And she found out that you actually were messing around with this girl.
Yes.
So Griselda went and hired a hitman to take care of you.
Well,
but she didn't hire the hitman. Someone else hired him.
Yeah, well, it was some young guys. It was Michael Corleone's friends.
Okay, so Michael Corleone, who's 15 at the time?
About 15, maybe 14.
14, 15 years old. He arranges for a hitman to come kill you.
Okay, so that day I spoke to Michael. So he pretty much, knew my itinerary. And the guys actually caught me 3 blocks before I entered Brookfield Village. They caught me at the red light on 98th and San Angelo Boulevard.
Okay. So they pull up in a Mustang.
They pulled up next to me. So I'm in the car. I don't got a care in the world because I don't have an enemy in the world. So I looked over and the driver pulled a pistol out the window and started shooting. I smashed through the red light, made a turn on, first street was Pippin, made a turn on Pippin, and I'm driving a Corvette ZR1. Well, you know how fast they are. So I got up to about maybe 140, 150 miles an hour down that little narrow street.
Right, so you get away.
I got away.
12 shots hit your car.
Yes.
But you get hit.
I got hit in the arm right here. So I was wearing a bulletproof vest. That absorbed 4 bullets.
Okay, so you were basically leaving the house with a bulletproof vest.
Oh, yeah.
That was normal for you.
Yeah, not because I had any enemies, because I didn't. But, I just like to be safe.
Okay. Had you gotten shot before this day?
Was I shot before I got shot that day?
Yeah.
I've never been shot.
Never been shot at?
Someone's put guns on me, like I said, when they try to rob me. But
right, no one's ever shot you before. So now you've been shot for the first time
I've been shot for the first time.
Okay, but it's not a serious injury. It's in your arm.
No, it's not serious, but, when the bullet get in you, it's hot.
Yeah.
It's hot lead.
How did it feel to get shot 4 times with a bulletproof vest on?
I didn't feel no type of way because the bulletproof vest, it was impregnated with the bullets,
Okay,
so,
well, I heard sometimes when you get shot,
sometimes it can break your ribs.
Takes the wind out of you.
Sometimes it can break your ribs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's still
but
bullets
I had the one with the Kevlar plate, so that was like the top of the line back then, like $600 vest. That was, 30 years ago.
Okay, so you go to the hospital, and what do you tell them?
I told him my name was Julius Henderson, which is my oldest brother's name.
Okay.
He had committed suicide 1987.
So you gave him a fake name.
Yeah, I gave him a fake name.
Right, because usually when it comes to, bullets, it's an investigation.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? The police
Absolutely.
don't play around with this.
Absolutely.
It's not like a hospital thing. The police are involved. They
Well, they definitely came and they questioned me.
And you just told them it's just random?
Yeah, I said some random guy shot me.
Right. And they're asking you why are you wearing a bulletproof vest?
Well, I took it off by then. Because remember, Amber came and got me. And she took me to the hospital. So I just told him my name, Julius Henderson. Some random guy shot me. I don't know who it was. I really didn't get a good look at him.
Okay.
And they asked, am I on probation, parole? Do I see?
Right. So they just let you go eventually.
Well, I checked out the hospital that night.
Yeah. So you go back to your house and you're hanging out with Amber, and then Griselda calls you.
That was like 3 days later.
3 days later.
Yeah. Because like I said, up until that point, I spoke to Griselda, multiple times a day. So the day I got shot, the phone calls, they ceased, all phone calls. So the third night, Griselda called. Amber answered the phone.
Oh, Amber actually answered the phone.
Amber answered the phone. She gave it to me. She didn't, she didn't talk. She answered the phone, handed it to me.
Okay, she didn't actually say hello.
No. And so Griselda was talking, I know what you've been up to. You've been cheating on me with a dirty white bitch. I gave you a better life and, you pay me back, by sleeping with this bitch. So she said, I want you to come to jail. Come visit me.
Well, she actually had a car outside.
Yes, that's what I'm getting to right now. Yeah. So she said, I want you to come and visit me. And if you don't, you can expect, something even worse to happen to you. She said, in fact, why don't you look out your window? So I looked out the window. It was a car parked there at the curb. And I grabbed my gun. I had a AR-180 at the time. Grabbed my gun, went back to the window. So they were leaving. She hung the phone up.
At this point, like you had never been shot before.
Never been shot.
Now you gotten shot. There's cars outside your window. There's someone who's worth $1 billion who hates your guts.
$2 billion at that point.
$2 billion who hates your guts. Did you think at that point, man, listen, let me just say I'm leaving all this, or maybe I'm just going to go to the authorities, or just move to another city and just disappear?
No. I made my bed, so I had to sleep in it. I mean, it was my fault. Had I not cheated on Griselda, knowing how jealous she is, that would have never transpired. So, I took complete ownership of it.
How's Amber taking all this?
Amber was afraid because as I was getting shot, Griselda stumped her cousin out in prison.
Oh.
And her cousin almost lost the eye.
So Griselda physically beat up
she physically
Amber's cousin.
Yes.
Because you met Amber because she was visiting her cousin in prison.
Yes.
And you were visiting Griselda.
Yes.
That's how you guys met.
That's how we met.
So both of you had people in that prison.
Yes.
So Griselda actually, I didn't know this part of the story. So Griselda went and beat up Amber's cousin.
Yeah, she beat her ass. I mean, she brutally beat her. And Amber's cousin was about maybe 100 pounds. So
and Amber's cousin had nothing to do with it.
No. Absolutely nothing.
You just have a crazed woman here who's just taken out on somebody. Okay, so the next morning you went to go visit Griselda in prison.
Yes.
How did that go?
Okay, so they brought Griselda in, light blinking above the door. They brought her in. She made her way quickly to me. She was upset, She usually always smiling, but she was just angry. She sat down across from me, and she was quiet. So I'm just waiting for her to open the conversation up. And she was like, "You are a dirty," she called me, a few other choice words. So when she grabbed me in my collar, she was so angry, she grabbed me in my collar. So at that point, my arm is fucked up, my arm is weak. And so I tried to, get her hand from around my throat. But not only is she strong, but she was also in a jealous rage. So it kind of made it difficult. So she ended up letting my collar go. She sat back down. I threw a threat out to her. You do it again, I'm gonna kill you. She laughed about it, talks a little more. So then she was quiet for a few moments, and she said, "I'm going to give you a final chance to come clean because I know the truth. Pictures don't lie." I fessed up. Griselda, okay, I've been cheating. I love you, but I'm a man. I have needs. So I'm trying to talk to her. I'm trying to bathe her in praises, Godmother, everything I've ever promised you, it has transpired. I've never stolen from you like other people have. I've been completely honest with you from day one, aside from me having sex with a white lady. So I threw some more praises at her, and she forgave me.
It's been that Oakland game.
Yes.
Talk your way out of it.
Yes.
It wasn't me.
Your eyes are a lie.
Okay. And she accepted your apology?
She did.
Okay. So now you guys are cool again. But then in 1994, her hitman, George Rivi Ayala, turns informant.
Okay, so Rivi had been in jail. Jorge Riverito Ayala had been in jail maybe about 8 years at that point. Okay, so the Miami-Dade attorney, Catherine Fernandez Rondo, was going to charge her with more, and it was going to be a penalty case against him because he was already serving life. And so now they hit him with multiple, so he can't get life again. It's got to be something even greater, the penalty. So he was looking at the penalty squarely in the eye. So Riverito, who had Johnny Castro, baby Johnny, by accident, and he also killed a husband and wife, the Lorenzas. It was a hard hit because they owed Griselda $2 million. So Griselda sent Rivi to take care of him, which he did. So now when they wanted to charge him with some additional, he called plus he was also jealous of my relationship with Griselda as well. He was hearing things as well. So he decided he's going to cooperate against Griselda. She's the big fish. He's just a guppy. So he called the state attorney's office, Catherine Rondo's office, and he said, "Listen, I'm ready to talk. I could tell you everything y'all want to know. I could take y'all to bodies, whatever you guys want to do." So they went and got him out to state prison, brought him to the state's attorney's office. And so they grilled him like over, I believe, a 2-day period. So he told them, and these were cold case, 15 years. So from 1982, because those three particular happened within 2 months of each other, the Lorenzas and Johnny Castro. So he basically told them why the Lorenzas, how much money the Lorenzas owed Griselda, and how baby Johnny actually got him trying to assassinate his father, Chucho. So when he gave that evidence against Griselda, him being the actual gunman, first person account, so a grand jury convened, listened to the evidence, and charged Griselda with the 3.
Right. So now Griselda's facing the death penalty.
She's facing the penalty.
Okay. How does she take that?
Okay, so we're going to back up just a tad bit. Reevy's testimony, all that was done in secrecy, okay? So Griselda and I, we talked to his cousin one day on the phone, because up until that point, she loved Reevy. She loved him, and me and Michael would even send Reevy money, in prison. So she loved him like a son. So we called Reevy's cousin. Reevy's cousin wanted to let the cat out the bag, like, Reevy has secretly met with the district attorney, and it's a possibility you're probably going to be indicted, Griselda. So that's how we found out about it.
Mm-hmm. How did she take it?
She was crushed, because at that point, Griselda was about maybe 24 to 36 months of being released. Because when she was sentenced, you got to understand, she was sentenced 35 years, but back then, you only did 1/30 a sentence.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so if you got 50 years, you only did,
17 years.
17 years, right. A little under 17 years. So on 35 years, she would do, 12 years or so. And so, it destroyed her. Not only because it's a possibility she'd never get out of prison, but the man that she loved all those years and trusted, a man who had committed for her, who was later responsible for up to 60 years. So that destroyed her.
Okay, so now she's facing the death penalty, potentially, but she comes up with a plan to get herself out of prison.
Yeah, so the plan was to kidnap and hold until she's released the president's son.
The former president's son.
The former president's son.
John F. Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy. Jr. So I spoke to her. She said, you have to come to the prison. I got to tell you something important. So I went to see her the next day, or maybe, no, that was a Wednesday, so I saw her Friday. Saw her 2 days later, and so she was crying and going through the motions. This is unfair. I have to get out of here. I have no more fight left in me. So she handed me a piece of paper. And so I opened it up. JFK, 5M, which is 5 million. NY, New York. I didn't know what it meant, so I thought that she had a shipment coming to New York. Because when we found out about Reevy had became a rat, we shut everything down. That day everything was shut down. So I thought, I assumed that the note was, a shipment coming to New York. I'm like, well, what is it? She's like, well, pass that information on to my son, El Negro, Dixon. And he'd take care of everything I need done. So I'm like, well, is it a shipment? She's like, no. I'm like, well, what is it? I said, because if I'm involved, you know, I would like to know exactly what it is so I can have a heads up so I can defend myself against it. You know what I mean? So we went back and forth for a few minutes, and then she finally got frustrated, and she said, okay, well, this is what it is. You know, I'm going to snatch Kennedy Jr. We're going to hold him for ransom. And the people who carried this out, they got $5 million coming to him. So that's what the note meant.
Okay. Now, this sounds like an interesting idea, but Kennedy is no longer the president. He's actually dead at this point.
True.
You know, although his son is a prominent person, I've never heard of a prisoner exchange over a kidnapping in America ever. You know, maybe this happens in Colombia or Iran or something, but kidnapping the kid of an ex-president to get out of prison, I mean, this must sound like a crazy idea.
Well, personally, I thought it would never work.
Yeah.
You know, but on the flip side, he was a member of a very, very prominent family.
Okay, but the family's no longer really in political power.
Well, no. Ted Kennedy was still in Congress.
He's a congressman, but I'm just saying.
Yes. Yeah.
I understand. Yes,
prominent,
there's money, but
I see exactly where you're going with it, of course. Okay, so like, I spoke against it because in my mind, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
This is not going to work at all.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, to a point where she got upset with me. But I'm like, Griselda, I'm only looking out for your interests, and I'm always going to be honest with you, if nothing else, right? So, but she was so destroyed that the only thing she was thinking about is getting out of jail, so she was desperate. And I told her, I said, Griselda, you taught me never make decisions when you're emotional. That's something you never do because it's going to backfire on you. You know, she was emotional. She was acting out of emotions, not sensibility. So, but she didn't agree with it. So she was dead set on going ahead with it. So I had no choice but to go along with her.
So you guys were going to kidnap John F. Kennedy Jr. and hold him hostage, and then they were going to let her go. And when they let her go, then you guys would let JFK Jr. go. And then
they would let him go.
They would let him go, and then somehow she would try to avoid being found by the U.S. government. Yes. I mean, this whole story sounds ridiculous.
Exactly. So her plan was we would go to Montenegro, which they didn't have an extradition treaty. So if it did work, she could have went to Montenegro and lived forever.
Okay.
But the thing of it is, how are you going to get to Montenegro? You know, it's not a feasible plan.
Right. The whole plan just sounds insane.
And that's what I tried to tell her.
Yeah.
But Griselda was hell-bent on going forward with it because, you know, she's possibly looking at the death penalty.
Yeah.
So what does she have to lose, according to her? In her words, what do I have to lose?
Okay, but at one point you actually did go along with it. She gives you $100,000.
Yeah, well, went along with as far as taking $100,000 to New York and some guns.
Okay. So you're actually going along with this plan. You're now implicating yourself.
Implicate myself
in a kidnapping of a major American figure, essentially.
To appease Griselda.
Appease Griselda. At what point do you like, okay, like this is crazy? Like, how did I go along with
I said that from the very beginning. It was crazy. You know, I even told her, I said, you know, Griselda, you know, you have too much money. We can fight them in court. I said, worst case scenario, I personally go and blow the DA's office up and destroy the records. You know, what have I got to do? You know, so, but she was set on kidnapping Kennedy, which was a bad idea from the very inception of it.
Right. So you go out to New York with $100,000. You met up with Griselda's cousin, Christine.
Yes.
And 4 Colombian kidnappers.
Yes.
And then they started to actually scope out.
Yeah, well, we got a cargo van. We bought a cargo van.
And they actually came close to actually kidnapping him at one point, right?
They came very close. I mean, literally within arm's distance away.
Yeah. I guess he was walking his dog, and then they were right there, and the dog went to go sniff one of the guy's feet or something, and they could have just snatched him up and then
sniffed the lady's feet.
Yeah.
Because it was guys and then one lady.
Got it. But I guess a cop was nearby, so they didn't end up snatching him up.
Policemen on just routine patrol, just happened to be driving by.
Yeah. And this is before there's all types of cameras all through New York City.
Yeah, of course.
So you might be able to kind of get away with it, but not really, but still.
Of course.
Okay, but ultimately they called it off.
They called it off until the next day, but they never saw him again.
Aha.
So, and then, by this point, Griselda's indicted for three first-degree
Aha.
Because of Reeves' testimony.
At what point do you actually start to cooperate?
I actually never cooperated.
Okay.
That's a big myth. I never cooperated.
All right, so explain what happens then.
Okay, so Griselda was moved from the prison in California to a federal prison, Marietta, Florida. So they pretty much slammed Griselda. They broke our communication off, right? So that kind of dissolved our relationship, business relationship. I got a subpoena in my mailbox, maybe about 6 months later, and I'll actually share it with you. Subpoenaed me to go to Florida for a deposition.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Florida, went to the deposition. And what you have to understand, she was never charged with the Kennedy thing. That issue was never even raised. She was only charged with 3. So the 3 that happened in 1982, I didn't know Griselda until 1991. So it's nothing I could tell them regarding those 3. I didn't have no information regarding that, you know what I'm saying? But that was, 9 years, 10 years before my time with Griselda. So, I had no relevant information about any that Reeve committed, on behalf of Griselda. And it's like I said, as far as the situation, that never came up. You know what I'm saying? That never ever came up, On my deposition, her lawyer kind of asked about it. And so...
Griselda's lawyer?
Yeah, Griselda's lawyer.
Asked you about the Kennedy assassination? Kidnapping?
Somehow it came up. Somehow it came up.
Okay.
So, but everything else, as far as I'm like, I didn't know Griselda during that time period. You know what I'm saying? And I told him, I said, that's all I've ever been.
Okay, well, I don't understand this part. So, at one point, the FBI raided your home.
Yes.
Right? That had nothing to do with the Kennedy thing at all?
That was a Kennedy thing because they heard the phone call. And also if you go back, Amber's cousin tipped the COs off because of when Griselda had beat her up previously, She was doing, I believe, a 10-year bid for. And so when the feds came to my house, they took me in and they also took some guns. I had SKS guns, it was some guitar cases. And so they took me to the district office. So they questioned me. I'm like, I really don't know about anything. I don't know. The only thing I know about is I don't know about this Kennedy situation. Well, we heard you talking about it or whatever. I was like, that's irrelevant. I don't know anything about anything, so you're really barking up the wrong tree.
Okay, well, because before you went and met with the feds, your mother got a call from Griselda's people.
She did.
Right? They said, hey, Griselda wants to give you $1 million for you not to say anything during this deposition.
Yeah, but see, the thing of it is, I wasn't going to say anything anyway.
Okay.
Because that deposition was just about those 3 murders.
Aha.
That's all the deposition was, those 3 murders that the state of Florida had charged her with. I didn't know anything about them.
Right, but you felt that phone call, they really just wanted to find out where you were in Miami so they could kill you, essentially.
Where I was, exactly.
Yeah. So you don't think she was really trying to give you $1 million?
No.
Okay. All right. So you go and do this deposition. You essentially don't tell him anything, is what you're saying?
I didn't tell them anything that was relevant. Only thing I said, I made X amount of dollars, and that's it. I could offer them no information about no, because I wasn't there, you know?
Well, do they know about your involvement in her?
Yeah, they knew all that. And
Okay.
like I say, I told them, well, you know, I don't know anything about I don't know anything about anything else, you know, and this is how much money that I made personally, you know what I'm saying, on my own, you know what I'm saying? So that's all I said.
Well, were they trying to charge you with the?
They wasn't trying, no, like I say, the deposition, it was only geared towards those 3.
They just wanted your cooperation against her.
They wanted me to cooperate against her for the 3.
But you didn't know anything about that.
But even if I did, I still wouldn't have cooperated.
Okay. Why were you not charged with the?
Because they never caught me doing anything.
Uh-huh.
But
aren't you admitting to it? Or is that like a proffer agreement kind of situation?
Yeah, it wasn't even a proffer agreement. I just said, you know, they weren't investigating me for, they was investigating the with Griselda. And they wanted me to cooperate with what Reeve had previously said, but I can't corroborate that because I don't know anything about that.
So have you met Reeve or talked to him at all?
I've never met Reeve, not once.
Not once, okay.
Like I say, I used to send him money to jail. And that's it, you know what I'm saying? I may have talked to him on the phone a few times, but I've never met him in person.
Gotcha. Okay. You do the deposition, you don't tell him anything, and they start to get ready for her trial, but then you have this strange turn of events that happen.
Yes.
With Reeve. Explain what happens.
Okay, so during the time when they were preparing for Griselda's trial, Reeve had coddled up to the secretary who was in charge of, who was under the prosecutor that was going to be prosecuting Griselda's case. So the secretary ended up falling head over heels for bad boy Reeve. And so they basically had a salacious phone affair, a sexual affair over the phone, and which compromised the case. And, you know, a lot of people said it was planned. No, it wasn't planned at all.
Right. It was basically phone sex.
Phone sex. So
from the office.
Yeah, so everybody was saying, well, Reeve planned to secure Griselda out of jail. No, he didn't. Absolutely not true at all. You know what I'm saying? So Reeve having phone sex with the secretary, and she engaging in it. They going back and forth. And so when Griselda's attorney found out about it, he exploited it.
How did he find out about it? Just going through phone records and
that I don't know, but I know it was rumors at first. It started as rumors. So the rumors were confirmed. And so they went to Reeve's jail cell and saw naked pictures of her. You know what I'm saying? From the chin down. So, and then that kind of broke everything up, busted everything open.
Right. So the penalty she was facing got pleaded down to 3 second-degree murder charges.
Well, she copped a plea 7 years for each. So she got 20 years.
Yeah.
Under the old sentencing guidelines, which you do a third, you know, even state, you know, Florida state. So she did almost 7 years on those 3.
Right, which meant at the time, when time served, she would get out in 5 years.
5 years or so.
5 years. Now, because you cooperated in some capacity.
0.
Well, what I'm saying is you had $1 million hit on your life. Right?
I did, but I went to a deposition. That's not considered cooperating.
So why'd you have a hit on you?
Because she assumed that I was going to say some things I shouldn't have said, but I didn't.
Okay.
In the end, I kept everything in. So, you know, I got secrets now that I'm going to take to the grave with me. You know, so she assumed that since, you know, they severed our communication, that, you know, I might flip like Reeve did, you know, the person she trusted more than anybody in the world.
Okay. But when she went through the transcripts, was that $1 million hit dropped, or did you still have $1 million hit that whole time? Or do you not know?
To be honest with you, I can't answer the question, to be totally honest with you, but I'm here now, so.
Okay. I mean, were you worried, though, at that point?
No.
Because did you speak to her after that?
I didn't talk to Griselda again until the premiere Cowboys 2.
Okay, so for all those years, you guys didn't talk at all?
No.
Got it. Okay, well, so she ends up copying a plea
For 20 years.
for 20 years. And then in 2004, she ends up having a heart attack. She was a lifelong smoker, I guess. And they let her out of prison based, on health reasons.
No, that's a rumor.
That's a rumor?
Yeah, that's a rumor.
Okay,
That's
so
a
what
rumor.
happened?
Okay, so she did her time. The deal, 20-year deal she took, she did her time, and she got released June 2004. So
Okay,
it wasn't a heart attack, or she didn't even smoke cigarettes.
Okay. So she got out just based on the time served.
Yes,
Okay, and as soon as she gets out, she gets deported back to Colombia.
yes,
And you're not talking to her at all at this point.
no. And so while she's being taken to the airport to be deported, so Riri got stabbed like 7 times as she's going from the jail to the airplane.
That same day.
Yeah, exact same time.
That's not a coincidence, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay, so she had Reeve stabbed.
Of course.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Did he survive?
Yeah, he lived.
Yeah.
He's still in jail.
Okay. So now she's out of prison. She's in Colombia. Are you worried about your safety at all?
Absolutely not.
Because you felt you didn't do anything.
No, absolutely not.
Okay. So then, 4 years later, in 2008, Cowboys 2, Hustling with the Godmother, gets released.
Yes.
And you're the star of this documentary.
I'm the star.
Why'd you decide to do it?
Okay, so the director and producer, well, let me back up just a little bit. I was online one day. And so I Googled Griselda, I Googled me. And so my picture came up. Our picture came up. And so it had a copyright symbol under it for Magnolia Films. Magnolia Films is based in New York. And at the time was owned by Mark Cuban. So, and then I saw an ad for Cowboys. So I'm like, damn, they're using my picture, put a copyright symbol on my picture, my personal picture, because I got the negatives to these pictures even today. So I called Magnolia. I'm like, yeah, my name is Charles Cosby. I came across my picture on the internet, and you guys have a copyright symbol beneath it. So explain this. So they said, well, we're doing a documentary with some young filmmakers out of Miami. So you can give me your number, and I'll pass it along. Gave my number. They called me the director called me like 3 minutes later, literally. And so like, Mr. Cosby, we've been trying to get in contact with you, while we're doing research for Cowboys. We're going to do a Cowboys 2 with some Cuban traffickers named Salvador Magluta and Willie Falcone. But since we're in contact with you now, can we interest you in doing a Cowboys 2 with just you and Griselda? I said, well, I'm a very private person. I'm under the radar. I'm a family man. That's not even my life no more. I said, but let me think about it. Give me some time. So I called him like maybe a month later. I said, listen, with some pride from my family, I'm going to do it. But I don't care about being famous. I don't want to be famous. I want ownership. So they made me an offer that I could not refuse, and they set up a film schedule. They flew to California, and we knocked out Cowboys 2, which went on to be the biggest true crime documentary of all time. #1 on Netflix, 6 consecutive years. #1 on CNBC. #1 on the Nat Geo channel. So we cleaned up pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it. I watched it when it first came out, and I watched it again.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was really interesting to see, well, when you and Griselda had your relationship, I guess you sent her videotapes of yourself back when you had the long permed hair.
Yes,
and
wow.
actually seeing you in that time, Kind of like the mind state you were in, some of the stuff you were saying was interesting.
Yeah. Well, I've always been a deep thinker, even when I was young. I failed at math, but I excelled in English. So I always knew how to piece words together.
Now, you say that Griselda called you when Cowboys 2 came out?
So when Cowboys 2 premiered, it actually premiered in Las Vegas at the Palms Theater. I mean, at the Palms Hotel, which was owned by the Maloof brothers at the time, or the Maloofs, I should say. So inside the Palms Hotel was a theater called the Brendan Theater, which is owned by Mark Cuban. And Mark Cuban is one of the financier of Cowboys 2, of course. So we had the world premiere there during the Cine Vegas Film Festival. So the following week, that was July 2008. So the following week, we had a second premiere in Miami Beach on Lincoln Road at the Colony Theater. So Michael Corleone was my special guest, but nobody knew it. I kept it under wraps.
So you and Michael Corleone are cool at that point?
Yeah, well, we had...
I mean, did he put a hit on your life?
Yeah, well, see, we had got back cool maybe about a month before Cowboy 2 premiered in Las Vegas.
You became cool with the guy that tried to have you?
Yeah, well, he's family,
Okay.
Sometimes family have problems, So
that's some serious problems
man.
It is.
That's
not your typical family problem.
It's really, it's not, but you forgive and forget.
All right.
And so we got in contact through a mutual friend a month before the premiere in Las Vegas. So I told him, at the premiere in Miami, I want you to come and be my special guest. Let's let the past be the past. So when the film had showed 101 minutes, so when it had showed, a lot of people didn't know Michael was there because it was a red carpet premiere. And so it was me on the red carpet, Michael, the producer, and, a few other people. So, then I had some guys coming from California, New York. So we were on the red carpet, took pictures together with that. So by that time, though, the theater was already filled with the audience was already filled. So the lights went out, and so we came in, and so they didn't know Michael was with me. So after the premiere concluded, I went on stage for a question and answer session. So one guy got up and he said, aren't you afraid that, the godmother, her family, they're going to come and, kill you for, revealing so much information in this documentary? I said, I have no fear in the world. I said, that's why I'm here with no security. I said, in fact, you know what? The world is attempting to make the Blancos and me into enemies, but that could be no further from the truth. And I'm going to dispel that rumor right now. I said, I have a special guest, and I want you to meet him. I said, Michael Corleone, stand up. He stood up, and they went crazy.
Okay.
They went crazy. So after that, Griselda had called from Medellin, and I spoke to her. She said, Charlie, I wish you well. Thank you for what you did for me. I wish you well.
So she had no qualms about you doing the documentary, nothing?
No qualms. She said she loved the documentary.
Okay.
She saw the documentary before I did.
Okay. Okay. So this documentary comes out, and Griselda's living back in Colombia. But then, 4 years later, September 3rd, 2012, Griselda Blanco was out with her pregnant daughter-in-law at a butcher shop on the corner of 29th Street in Medellin. And what happens next?
I actually been to the butcher shop. So she wanted to cook a big dinner for her family, because she had become family oriented. She was, all about her family. She was retired from the business. She was a 69-year-old grandmother, doing all the things that she had missed out on the 20 years she was locked up in prison. So her daughter-in-law drove her to the butcher shop. She got out the car, went in, and it's a open-sided butcher shop on both sides. While she was at the counter, a motorcycle passed by, caught her attention. So she continued what she was doing. Passed by again. So she continued paying for her meat. And mind you, that's a one-way street. So as she's coming out of the butcher shop, that same motorcycle, the same two guys on it, wearing helmets, came by a third time, but this time he slowed down and stopped at the curb. So the guy on the back of the motorcycle jumped off and ran at her and let her have it. She was assassinated.
Yeah, she was shot in a similar fashion that she would have people during the Miami.
Well, she invented the so-called motorcycle assassination technique.
Yeah.
Where, the guy on the back of the motorcycle, when they drive by, the guy on the back of the motorcycle is the one who let you have it.
Do you have any idea who did it? Did anyone take credit for it?
Okay, I'm going to tell you something. So, do you know, not to get off subject, but do you know a guy named Papaya?
Mm-mm.
Pablo Escobar's top hit man.
Okay.
So I met with him in Medellin before he died of cancer. And so he told me the entire story off the record.
So he was the one that had her.
No, not at all, not at all. But he know who was involved. But he had zero to do with it. Zero.
So you know who did it?
Maybe so, maybe not.
But you're not going to tell me who did it. Okay. Was it a revenge for some of the stuff that she had done previously?
Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely.
So it was just karma catching up.
From the faraway past, absolutely.
I mean, why was she living in Medellin knowing how much beef she had?
Okay,
how much bloodshed?
The thing of it is, Griselda was revered in Medellin.
Okay.
She was completely revered. Everywhere Griselda went, they showed her love. She was completely revered.
Okay. And you say that you've been to that butcher shop, you've been to Colombia. What were you doing in Colombia during those times?
Okay, so when I wrote my book, before I started writing it, I had a vision of closing my book at her gravesite, talking to her. And so I went to Medellin for that very purpose of closing my book at her gravesite.
After she died?
Yes.
When you found out that she got, how'd you feel? Okay,
so I got one of my good friends in Medellin. His name is Juan. He's like a brother to me. I was at home, the phone rang. It was a Medellin number, answered. He was like, boss, they knocked Griselda down to the butcher shop. I'm like, knocked her down? He was like, yes. So it was like a bull that kicked me in my chest. That's how I felt, you know what I'm saying? Because regardless of, we were no longer in communication, she was a big part of my life, and I just can't gloss over that. She was a big part of my life. I still held her in the highest regards, as well as Michael. Once they're your family, they're always your family. That's how I feel. That's how I embrace people. So it was a sad day for me. It was sad because, like I say, she was a 69-year-old grandmother, had lived the worst part of her life, and now she was at a much better place in her life, doing the right thing, family-oriented, taking care of family, cooking for her family, something she had lost the opportunity to do years ago.
Right, well, because two of her sons had gotten killed at one point?
Okay,
we talked about Osvaldo getting killed by Escobar's people, but then another one of her sons got killed.
And then Uber was or Weber, whatever, however you want to pronounce it.
How did he get?
He was shot to death as well.
In Colombia?
In Colombia,
Before or after?
He was in 2000. He was assassinated in 2000.
Oh, so this was after she had pled.
After she had pled.
After she got in the plea deal.
Before she was released.
Before she was released. She lost two of her sons while she was
incarcerated, yes.
Okay. And then, the same year that Griselda was killed, Michael was arrested for trafficking? It was right around that time because he was on house arrest during this time.
Okay, see, I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything.
You heard about it though?
No, I haven't heard about it until right now.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, he was placed on house arrest after being sentenced on 2 felony counts of trafficking.
Okay.
And conspiracy to traffic.
Okay.
And then later on in 2019, he was in the VH1's docuseries Cartel Crew.
Yes.
Okay. And you guys have remained in contact and everything?
Not direct contact, but we have a mutual friend. When I want to send him a message, she'll send him a message and he'll send a message back.
Got it. Well, after she was, there was a lot of talk of different types of shows. At one point, HBO announced that they were actually doing a, series about her that was going to star Jennifer Lopez.
Jennifer Lopez, she was also the executive producer.
Right.
Well, was scheduled to be the executive producer.
Didn't you threaten to sue over this situation?
Okay, so like TMZ had contacted me. This lady named Erica Goldman or Goldberg, I don't remember her last name. So she contacted me and she said, I want your take on Jennifer Lopez starring as Griselda Blanco in this HBO series. So I did an in-depth interview with TMZ. So she said, well, how do you feel about her playing Griselda? And so I said, you know what? I said, I'm all for it. I think she's a good actress, but I don't want to be involved. I got my own film that I'm preparing, so I don't want to be involved. And if HBO does include me in any way, I will sue. So it wasn't that I was going to sue Jennifer Lopez, but I was more or less talking about HBO.
Right. And that series never came out.
It never came out.
Right.
Never came out.
But then there was a Lifetime biopic called The Godmother that Catherine Zeta-Jones played.
Yes.
Griselda.
And it flopped.
It flopped. I didn't even hear about it until I researched it.
It flopped. It flopped.
You watched it?
No.
Okay, it was that bad.
Yeah, I never saw it.
Right. And then that brings us to today, where Netflix had the Griselda series starring Sofia Vergara. And everyone's talking about this right now.
Oh, yes. It's a big movement.
You watched it?
To be honest with you, okay, so I really haven't watched TV since 2014.
Okay.
But I did catch it. It was a fictional portrayal.
Okay.
Even the producer said that. It was a fictional portrayal.
Okay.
But it was put together very well.
Yeah, it was a hell of a series.
Yeah, it was.
It was very well done, very well written, a lot of drama, a lot of great acting.
No mistake about it.
Yeah, Sophia killed it. She's going to get awards over this.
Oh yeah, it made the noise that you would expect it to.
Right.
I mean, it made a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Even at the airports, I saw promos for it at the airport. Griselda Blanco, suitcases full of false money. So I mean, it did what it was supposed to do. So, and I'm happy it succeeded because when those other projects are successful, my projects are going to be even more successful.
Right. Well, isn't Michael Corleone suing Netflix over this, over his portrayal?
From my understanding, he is, yes.
Okay. Maybe we'll see what comes of that. I mean, biopics are kind of weird, where it's like you don't necessarily have you don't have to pay people to be in a biopic if someone is involved who actually knew those people and are just telling them the portrayal.
Yeah.
If I do a VladTV biopic and I talk about an interview with you, we don't necessarily have to pay you to be in it. I could just say, this is how the interview went, and here's the actor portraying you, and it is what it is.
Well, hopefully they'll reach a settlement, because if they did everything Michael say they did as far as stealing his content, because he sat down for an interview.
Oh, okay.
Maybe 2016.
Aha. Oh, so they're using part of his content.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, according to Michael.
Than just a
so
string.
if they in fact did use that content, to create the story, he deserved, a few $1 million.
Sure.
At the very least.
Hey, man, listen. You get what you get.
Absolutely.
And it's a hell of a series, though. Like, I got to say.
Oh, yeah.
Because we had been talking about doing this interview for a while, but then when I saw the series, I said, okay, now I got to bring him in. Now's the real reason to bring him in.
The funny thing of it is, Vlad, I didn't know that you've been trying to interview me since January 2008. I had no idea. You know what I'm saying? Because Mafia originally sent his initial email.
Yeah.
And I wasn't following Mafia on Instagram. And I happened to follow him, and it popped up.
Yeah, shout out to Mafia. He's actually right here right now.
Oh, he's a good dude. Real good dude. I give him his props. Good dude.
When you look at some of the people that went after you in terms of most notably BMF and Big Meech, what are your thoughts about it, being that you were in a similar business?
So, like, to get as big as BMF did and Big Meech as the leader, that was rare. You know what I'm saying? You only see that like the cartels or even the mafia. You don't see that, with black organizations. And they were structured, like a mafia cartel. So that what made BMF so unique. And on top of that, they made a lot of money. And then they were organized. So you don't really see that in a lot of black groups. So, you have to give them their props. You'll never see that again.
What about the flashiness, though? They had billboards, the world is BMFs. They would put themselves on the cover of magazines and do music videos.
Yeah.
Because I remember I partied with them at one point, and I was looking around going like, this is insane what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah.
These are clearly...
Yeah.
No one's selling any records, even though they're pretending that they have a record label. There's billboards. Everyone's got Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Everyone's got bottles of Cristal. In my mind, I'm thinking everyone's going to prison, and I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah.
And I separated myself and just watched from a distance. And everything I thought was going to happen ended up happening, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I like all those guys.
Oh,
Shout out to Big Meech. I've hung out with him. Shout out to Blue Da Vinci. Like, all these guys are cool in my book. But it was clear what was about to happen.
Yeah. Well, the thing of it is, when you make that type of money, sometimes you want to show your success. You want to, in the form of, driving your cars, wearing, certain watches or whatever. I mean, that's just go for anybody. So whether you're or a corporate CEO, you like to wear your success or drive your success.
Yeah, but showing off your success when that success is completely illegal is a
little
different.
Yeah, you got a point there, but at the same time, from my understanding, they had a lot of legitimate business as well. Real estate portfolios or whatnot. So,
So, they're not really that legitimate.
Well, that's up for speculation. I don't know. I don't know any of the guys.
Big Meech got kingpin charges. It's not like this is a secret. I mean, he's still in prison right now. So it's not like I'm blowing the seal from, some big secret. Like, it just is what it is at this point.
You're right.
And there's a BMF TV series, so it's all out there. It was all
of public record. You're right.
It's all public record. This is what I'm saying.
Yes,
and
of
it's
course.
sad as to what happened because Meech was a cool guy, man. Like I said, I hung out at his house and everything else like that. And
Well, the good thing of it is he's got a discharge date, so it's not far off from my understanding. So, that's a good thing. Guys like that, they need to be back on the street. From my understanding, I heard his brother got out of jail.
His brother got out a couple of years ago.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
Exactly. Going through what you went through, how did you basically say, I'm done with this altogether and I'm just going to live my regular square life and not dabble in something that I know that I can make a whole bunch of money in but has serious repercussions?
Well, the thing of it is, when a man loves his family, he put nothing before him. So that was my motivation. I love my kids, and all the money in the world can't replace that relationship. I get arrested, I go to jail. I'm gonna lose all that.
Yeah.
So, money is not worth, the streets is a lie.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that until they doing life in prison, or taking their last breath. The streets are a lie. Streets don't care about nobody.
Right. There's no reward for staying solid, not snitching.
Yeah, no reward.
You come out, there's no big
reward,
pile of money waiting for
pension
you.
plan, no anything.
Yeah. The cartel sometimes takes care of its people, but out here, people get out and they're just broke.
It's every man for himself.
Yeah. And on top of it, everyone I've ever talked to, like the Freeway Rickies of the world, all that money you put aside, that property you put in other people's names.
Oh, they take it. When you go to jail, they take it.
That's it. You come out and they're not giving it back. They're not signing it back on. And that money you put aside gets spent.
Of course.
And there's good excuses as to why it got spent.
That's a part of the game.
That's just all part of it.
Wins and losses.
Mostly losses.
Mostly losses,
man. And you just got very lucky. Because you could have caught some very major charges along the way.
Yeah. Okay. So lucky, yes. Smart, yes. You know, you got to know when to walk away. You know, anything you're doing regarding criminality, you know, nobody can do it forever, no matter what you do. Any other kind of crime. Nobody can make a career at illegal shit for the rest of your life. That's something you can't do.
Yeah.
You know, your day is going to come eventually if you stay in that life. You know, I loved my kids too much. You know, that was more important to me than a pile of money.
Yeah. You were smart enough to actually walk away.
They're still here.
Still here.
Still looking good.
Yep. You know, still healthy.
Still healthy.
Still alive.
Still alive.
You know, which...
And they still talking about me.
Yeah, and when you think about it, Griselda Blanco shot to death. Her 2 sons shot to death. Her hitman still alive, but stabbed up and doing life in prison. All types of other people around, either dead or in prison. You were essentially the lucky one, and you got to actually tell your story.
Absolutely.
On top of it. So
a lot of times stories die with people.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, Charles Cosby, man, I appreciate you coming in. Like I said, when Cowboys 2 first came out, I watched it, and I'm like, yo, this is one day I'd like to interview this guy.
Vlad, I appreciate that.
No, it was a great project, man. It was it was so different from Cowboys 1 because it just focused on you and your story. Cowboys 1 was sort of a lot of different characters.
Yeah, it was all over the place.
It was all over the place.
But CC2 was streamlined just with me and Griselda.
Exactly. Was there a Cowboys 3?
I'm not even sure, to be totally honest with you. Okay. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm surprised there wasn't a...
I actually only seen Cowboys 2-3 times at the premieres.
The premieres.
All the years it was on cable TV. And actually Netflix is getting ready to relicense it now.
Well, it's on Netflix right now.
Okay, well, they relicensed it.
Yeah, they've already relicensed it.
Yeah.
You got a check coming in the mail.
Actually, a big check. I'm telling you.
I actually watched it on Netflix this morning.
Okay, so
I'm sure that with Griselda,
they relicensed it last week then.
Right. So along with the Griselda series, obviously it makes sense to relicense.
Yeah, because we were number one on Netflix 6 years.
Yeah.
From 2012 to 2017, 6 consecutive years, number one.
Yep. Well, Charles, man, I appreciate you coming in, and congratulations on being a survivor.
I appreciate you, and I would like to say this in closing. You know, like a lot of people, family, friends, you know, it was like, you know, don't go on Vlad. You know, don't do it. I'm like, you know what? I've been watching dude since the very beginning. You know what I'm saying? I got a lot of respect for that dude. I got so much respect for him. You know what I'm saying? And they was talking about, well, you know, the guy who took 2 hours, like, check this out. That dude admitted to it on camera.
Right.
Vlad didn't do that.
He wrote a book,
yeah,
actually, before I interviewed him.
And he wrote a book, you know what I'm saying? So, but like I say, I fuck with you. I hate it took so long to meet you. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, I admire you, brother. I love your platform. You know, you ignite a lot of careers and you reignited old careers, this platform.
Thank
you. Know what I'm saying? So I appreciate what you're doing, and, you know, hope to see you at the premiere of my movie.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait for the Charles Cosby movie. Your version of the whole thing.
Legacy.
That's what it's called, Legacy?
Legacy.
Can't wait for it to come out, man. That's what it is. Peace.